All right, everybody. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started with the April 3rd, 2024 Standard Specifications and Detail Committee. All right. First off, I want to thank everybody for attending. Your attendance is valuable, everybody here and online. The committee is made up of all of you members. We do have a quick introduction. We have a new member from the town of Florence. Florence, I guess, is back on the scene. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, I'd appreciate it, Brian. Brian, are you there?
Yeah, what can you hear me now?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, I had to unmute, but no, my name is Brian. I'm from the town of Florence. I'm the engineering technician here. Perform plan reviews, review standards and specs for the town. My background, I come from the Midwest. I worked at a bunch of different municipalities serving as an engineering technician, engineering inspector for the northern Chicago suburbs.
Well, great. Welcome to the committee. We're glad to see Florence. Florence is part of it and you're here. We appreciate that. All right, we'll move into agenda item number 2, the call to the audience. This is where an opportunity will be provided to the members of the public to address the committee on items that are not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of MAG. Informational items, or on items on the agenda for discussion, but not for action. Members of the public attending in person are asked to fill out a request to speak form. Comments must not exceed 3 minutes in length. A total of 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item, unless the chair requests an exception to this limit. Members of the public attending in person may comment on agenda items posted for action at the time the item is heard. Those attending virtually may submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website at azmag.gov/comment and indicate for which meeting the comment is intended. Comments must be received at least 2 hours prior to the posted start time for the meeting. Comments received by the deadline will be provided to the members of the committee in advance of the meeting for consideration. Comments received after the deadline will be provided to the committee members at the next scheduled meeting of the committee, except for comments specific to an agenda item for that meeting. Please note that comments for specific agenda items received after the deadline will not be forwarded and would need to be resubmitted prior to the next meeting of the committee. Gordon, do we have any comments?
I did not receive any online comments this month.
Thank you. Move into agenda item number 3, the approval of March 6th, 2024 meeting minutes. Gordon will pull those up and we'll run through them. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to review them. I did see somebody had left a correction. I believe, was it Warren had left a correction. So refresh your memory and then we'll get into the next step. Remember, at any time, we can go back and utilize the YouTube video. All this is stored on YouTube, so you can review exactly what was said if you think there may need to be a correction. After going through this, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
This is Warren. I'll motion.
Thank you, Warren. Need a second motion to approve the meeting minutes?
This is Roy. I'll second.
Thank you, Roy. We'll go ahead and move on into a roll call vote.
Okay. Let's start in the middle with Maricopa County. Maricopa County, are you there?
Yes, technical difficulties, got it working. Yes,
Got you unawares. All right. Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria. Phoenix. Phoenix. Scottsdale.
Yes.
Surprise.
Yes.
Who's here for surprise today?
This is Rob Fields with the City Surprise.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Gordon, real quick. This is Jose Rodriguez with Phoenix. I was having trouble with my unmute. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jose. Tempe. Don't think Tempe's on right now. Youngtown. Same with Youngtown. Okay, Avondale.
Yes.
Buckeye.
Yes.
Chandler.
Yes.
El Mirage.
Yes.
I guess we have Florence now.
Yes.
Gilbert.
Yes.
Glendale.
Yes.
And Goodyear. Anyone that I missed? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, for agenda item number 4, we have the cast in place concrete pipe presentation. This is a presentation by representatives of Blue Core. Blue Core Construction or Contracting? It's contracting. We're gonna go ahead and put a presentation up on for everybody to see. We'll give Blue Core a moment to introduce themselves, and we'll try to keep that presentation to a reasonable amount of time, 15 minutes, give or take, plus or minus 1.2. All right, I'll turn over the mic to the Blue Core guys. If you guys can quick introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. I'm Jared with Blue Core.
and my name's Tono.
And thank you for entertaining us today. We're here to talk a little bit about cast in place concrete pipe. And so we're going to briefly talk about what cast in place is, why it's a great benefit, and how the concrete pipe is manufactured if we get to that point. So excerpts from American Concrete Institute report cast in place concrete as an underground continuous non-reinforced concrete conduit having no joints or seams. A brief history on cast in place pipe is the strength of it can be attributed to the centuries of old arch design principle. The old arch design sewer systems in the world built in Athens and Rome 2,000 years ago were cast in place without reinforcement. CIACP cast in place concrete pipe was used as early as 1922 in the Turlock Irrigation District of California to replace open irrigation canals or laterals. Fast forward to use in Arizona. Since the 1950s, CIPCP has been used mainly on storm drains and irrigation lines. However, in most recent years, we've seen a significant demand increase in stormwater retention systems. And just for a little history, Blue Core has been involved in the cast in place concrete pipe movement since shortly after its inception in 1989. So the recommended applications for cast in place concrete pipe are storm drains, irrigation lines, and underground retention tanks. Up here, you'll see the different states that Blue Core has manufactured the pipe in: Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, North Dakota, New Mexico, and Texas. And then on the right side of the slide there, what you'll see is the mag spec 620. There's a spec in ADOT for 501-2, and then American Concrete Institute is 34609. And now we'll get into some of the benefits and why we're here to talk a little bit about how we think we can help. And we all know that CMP is a great product and has been proven for quite some time to work in its best fit. We're in no way trying to take away from that. All we're trying to do here is to provide another tool or solution for an engineer to have in its belt. And we know when CMP rusts and eventually collapses, it becomes a safety risk, it creates drainage concerns, and ultimately becomes very expensive for owners. And this is where we want to help. As you can see off here to the left of the slide, that's become an increasing trend across the valley. And I'm going to turn it over to Tono here a little bit more to talk about some of that.
Yeah, I think that the Cast in Place offers a very a viable option to stormwater retention. And in our history, it was not used for stormwater retention. It has been primarily a storm drain. It's only been in the last 8 to 10 years that we've seen this, and it's a result of this situation. And I don't think that this is a CMP issue. I think this is an owners, that the owners are not informed. And that's one of the things that we would like to do as part of this committee is help on the maintenance side and help inform people when they do put in certain products that there's maintenance that needs to be done as part of that. And I think that will greatly reduce what we see happening. But Cast in Place is a great alternative to this. And so we can get into a little bit more of how it's produced and what it is. But up on the slide, you'll see multi-barrels. This is a typical installation in a private or outside the right-of-way parking lot where you have multiple barrels of 120-inch pipe, and it acts identical to a CMP design where it's tied to dry wells and it acts as a buffer for volume of stormwater until it percolates back into the ground. But I've walked thousands and thousands of miles of pipe that's been installed for 10 years and 20 years and seen what it looks like, and have dealt with property owners and personal friends of mine that have had to deal with settling parking lots. And it's a very, very difficult thing. And so we have a very vested interest in this, not only and to add another product to the marketplace for stormwater retention, but to assist the property owners, because there really isn't, when they have an issue, there really isn't an insurance policy that covers those types of risks. And so as you can see, you have different variations of the pipe. You'll notice one of the pictures is on a radius. That is something unique to Cast in Place pipe, is that it can be poured on a radius, and that allows manholes to be placed where they're actually needed, not just at angle points. So as we talk about efficiencies in the pipe and why, it's a big efficiency, is you're able to put manholes where you need them, not where you have to have them, so to speak. And that's very unique to this process versus other materials. And so the big thing, and this has been this way for 30 years that I know of, but of traditional pipe methods in RGRCP or a Hobos or any of them, is that you're going to be roughly 30% cheaper than those products because of these cost savings. And so you can see up on the slide that it's handled once. You're delivering concrete to a site. You're not delivering materials and bedding and shading. There's less time for the crew to be there. And then you don't have the delay time. And that's something that in the last 4 years, or since COVID, has become just brazenly obvious. Everything had a longer lead time. And it became a preferred method on a lot of our projects, is that we would have projects that were spec'd out as RGRCP or others, and the lead times are so great that they would actually ask us, hey, you can do it. And as a contractor, we can go do it. And so so those are some of the benefits to it and the cost effectiveness of it. And so as a cross section, you can see what this does. It's not just the cost of the actual material put in the ground, but when you look at why it's more cost effective, is it's very easy to see in the trench, is that the trench is dug to the exact outside diameter of the pipe, which means you don't have all the excess bedding and haunching material you'll need to keep other pipe materials intact and give them their structural integrity. And that just furthers it when you have to haul that material off when you're when you're in an area, or you have to pave back more asphalt and place more ABC there. And so that's just one of the many reasons of why it becomes more cost efficient. And so now we have a scenario where we've now been doing this for 30 plus years, and it's neat to look back on projects because you can see the history that's been there. And so furthering these very things, these are slides that are of past projects. The top right picture there is the I-10 freeway at the Broadway curve, and it's right next to Tempe Diablo Stadium, but that was 2007 to 2008. Now that pipe has now been covered up by the freeway because it's been widened over the last 15 years. But that was a preferred method for that project because of the room. They did not have the room within the right of way to put in an RGRCP. And so it became the preferred method and a quicker method at that. And so we'll go into now just how it's produced. I think that people have a general idea of what it is, but quickly going through this, the trench is excavated with a round bottom bucket. That bucket has the outside diameter of the pipe built into it. And so what you're looking at in that slide, that is a 96-inch pipe, but the bucket outside diameter and the radius would be equivalent to about 112 inches outside to outside because it's the outside diameter of the pipe. Now, on storm drains, all storm drains flow in one direction. The water is conveyed from point A to point B, and therefore that trench has to be dug on a certain slope. And that's where you'll see the picture to the left has a pipe laser with a target on the bucket. Pipe laser is used for every sewer application and every other storm drain application to lay the pipe, but that slope is dialed into the laser and the trench is dug to that laser beam. With storm retention pipe, most of the time the storm retention pipes that I have seen over the last 5 to 10 years have been flat. There is no slope in one direction. And so the slope on those is 0. And so at that point in time, the trench is excavated, it's to grade. We go ahead and put the machine, which we call a boat, down in the trench, and that is what actually extrudes the pipe. Once the pipe is extruded, and as it's being extruded, there are supports that are placed inside, and the pictures that you're looking at are on the inside of the pipe or inside of the boat where the forms are placed, and you see the supports that are there to hold the forms in place. Now, those forms, they support approximately 270 degrees of the pipe. So from roughly 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And the supports are just a little bit less than that, but they keep the form shape intact as the concrete is poured over the top of it. Now, one of the questions we get asked a lot is the concrete a special type of concrete? And the answer to that is no. It is a MAG 3000 PSI. That is a very standard mix around town that we pour. And the only thing that really changes is what admixtures we put in depending on the season. You know, if it's in the wintertime and it's cold, we might add an accelerator. If it's hot in the summer, we'll add a retardant, chilled water, those types of things to help the process. But slump 1 inch to 2 on larger pipe, it's 1 inch to 1.5 inches. And so it's very, very stiff. Now, the way the machine works is the machine has an anchor, and in the background on the left, you see a trench anchor. We call that the dead man. That anchor anchors itself up against the trench wall, and that's what the winch or motor on the boat is connected to and allows the boat to pull itself along the bottom of the ditch. As it's being propelled along the bottom of the ditch, there's concrete that's poured into the hopper, and forms are lowered down into the machine, in which the machine slides over the top of those forms. The concrete hits the form, and the concrete is consolidated by use of a vibrator or what we call a stopper all the way around the 360 degrees of the form and the pipe. And so the result is an extremely dense and compact concrete that's consolidated all the way around the form, and that creates the pipe. Now, one of the things that you'll see in this picture is the top of the pipe, which is a small a small picture on the top, and we hand trowel that and cover it with a visqueen or a plastic, just simply to help the curing process. The bottom picture, we have the man down inside, and he is hand finishing from the bottom of the form, so the remaining 90 degrees of the pipe that's open and exposed. He also helps us control the grade. If there's anything that, if the concrete is too wet, you find the concrete can slide down into the invert of the pipe. And if it's too dry, it may be a little bit thin in that area. And so we use a laser on the inside of the pipe. And he is the one, as he's trialing the pipe, he is watching that laser and making sure that the quality is correct for what we need to achieve. So I'll turn the last bit over to Jared, but we appreciate your time and the opportunity to present this to you guys.
Yes, and from where Tono left off, it's basically a backfill process and into the grading. So we'll leave it open for Q&A at this time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Very informative. I heard the working group, you guys presented to the working group on this a while ago, or?
Just a brief summary of it, we did.
Okay, good. So this had a little more information in it.
Yes.
I'll start off with a question or two regarding backfill. Didn't really get into that, but what's the recommended time frame, or what are we doing? Are we going by strength? We got to cast cylinders, 28 day. I mean,
yeah, it's a great question, and we get that question a lot. So we want the concrete. MAG has a great specification on this. We want the concrete. You immediately on pouring, I say immediately same day, want to place 6 inches of material over the top of the pipe, just to keep the curing process in place. But as far as backfilling, you want the concrete to be a minimum 2,000 psi. And so when you're pouring, yes, you take cylinders every 50 yards as a standard process, and we'll request, and this is just our process, we'll request a 1 day and a 3 day and a 7 day break. We want to make sure that when it breaks, we have the strength, and then we can go ahead and backfill the rest of the way up. And so it's based on compressive strength.
great. And this is mostly, it sounds like this is intended for the outside of right of way.
Yeah, the purpose of this working group and this committee, yes, is we want to make sure that everyone knows that it's a viable option for outside the right of way, and it's a great option, as a matter of fact.
I think you summed it up when you said it's just another tool in the toolbox, right?
It is. I'm a firm believer in the marketplace, and I think we need more tools available for engineers to solve problems on projects, not less. And so I love competition, and that's why I'm not saying that this is an end all be all. It's going to do everything for stormwater. I do think CMP is a great product, and I do think StormTech and StormCapture and all the products out there are great. They drive down prices, which in turn spurs economic development, which benefits all of us. And so that's what we want to see.
Oh, thank you. Do you have any under traffic? Does
We
Blue
have.
Corps have anything under traffic?
We have lots under traffic. Every freeway in town for ADOT has cast in place pipe on it.
By Blue Corps, you guys put it in?
Yes, and there's a few sections of the freeway that we have not put it in. Police, everyone knows police here in town. Police construction put the other stuff in, but pretty much every freeway in town has it on it.
Kind of
And
depth.
we have it anywhere from 6 feet of cover underneath freeways all the way to 42 feet of cover underneath freeways.
Probably have a concrete slab on top of that to help protect it.
They have they have the freeway PCCP on top of it, but yeah, from everywhere from very deep to very shallow.
So those pretty much sum up my few questions I had. I'll open it up to the committee for any other questions or interaction with Blue Corps while we have them held captive.
I'll just mention, we recently added Blue Corps onto our approved products list for that reason, just to offer a few additional underground storage options.
You added
Mhm.
the contractor or the
The
process?
methods, the process, and by Blue Corps at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, or approved equal type of thing
And that's in your supplements?
in our approved products list. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you, Warren. Anybody else have any questions or?
Yeah, this is Jim Battlewitch with the city of Avondale. I got a couple questions. In the beginning, you guys kind of gave the history of it. I think you guys are putting this in before '89. I'm not trying to date myself, but I seem to recall it going in like 85, 86, for storm drain applications. So my question is, what do you do if you got really sandy soils, especially on the bottom? You said you could do it in all materials, but it's got to be a little more difficult. So do you guys do anything different if it's sandy soils?
Yes, Jim, that's an excellent question. And to go back to your first time, yes, Gordon Bluth that started Bluecor was putting in cast in place pipe in the early and mid 80s, working for another contractor. If you were around back then, JWJ was a large, heavy highway contractor, and he worked for them and was doing it back then. But as far as the soils go, yes, that's an excellent question. The method that we use, and it really comes down to economics, is that when you have poor soil conditions, a sand or a rock, for instance, we overdig the pipe and we backfill it with suitable material with engineered fill, and then we redig the pipe out of the engineered fill. And that's how we deal with it. Now, obviously, there's additional cost to do that, and that's where it has to be. It's great to have it as an add alternate to another product, because it might come down that doing that process on a certain project that it's not economically feasible for the project, and it's cheaper to go with something else. And so I hope does that answer your question there?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. The other question I had is you had some early in the presentation, you had some pictures, I think, where it was used for underground retention, maybe in a parking lot or somewhere. How do you install the stuff so close together like that? Some of the pictures you had just had, linear trench, but how do you do the multiple, parallel pipes, more than one in a row? Like, it seemed like it was pretty close together. I'm just curious from a constructability, how you guys install that.
Yeah, great question. You picked up on that pretty good out of those pictures. The pipes are actually, the spring line of the pipes are actually touching each other because the pipe is dug into undisturbed native. You have, in essence, perfect haunches of the pipe, which is the structural integrity of the pipe. And so with that being the case, you're digging into that undisturbed native, and the pipes actually touch each other at the spring line. And so when you looked and saw those pictures, there's 6 barrels of 120-inch pipes side by side by side. And that's a benefit when you're needing, in lieu of putting 2 or 3 feet between each of the pipes, it reduces the amount of area that you actually have to have for the pipe placement. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So, but I'm just trying to visualize what it looks like, the lower half of the pipes, from in a cross section. So you really don't have any radiuses in that area. It's kind of just all concrete, I assume.
That's correct. We actually do have some stamped details that we can put out to the committee for multi-barrel applications if you'd like to see those.
Yeah, I'd like to see what it looks like, how you put them close side by side like that, and what the bottom part of the pipe looks. Obviously, the top part is formed, but I'm just curious what the bottom part looks like. And can you do that the same day side by side like that?
Typically, we do not. On large diameter pipe, you're using a 150,000-pound excavator, and the tracks of the machine will stay within the footprint of the pipe. But when you get to smaller pipe, a 48-inch pipe or a 60-inch pipe, the track of the excavator has to sit over the pipe that was previously poured. And so we have to let that pipe cure 100% and be backfilled for him to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, now that you explain it, but that picture just doesn't, I don't see how you install that without any backfill in that picture. I don't know if you could bring that back up, but I'm just curious. It almost looked like you had cast it, separately and then picked them up and set them side by side after they were cured.
So they are cast separately. Let's go back to that picture. They are cast separately, but on a 120-inch pipe, the outside diameter of the pipe, you're talking 140, 150 inches wide. And so what happens is that excavator, when he sits, his footprint is not over the top.
Yeah.
There we go. Right
Yeah,
there.
right there. So How do you do that?
So if you look closely, Jim, you could see the haunch area is not concrete. It appears, and correct me if I'm wrong, it appears that it's native material
It is.
in
It
between
is.
each one of those. So I think what he's saying is they cast the one, then they scoot over and they use the curved bucket or the round bottom bucket and then excavate for the second. And then they just keep going down the line.
That's correct. Yeah, the haunch is native material that's there.
They are tight. They are
They're
touching.
sorry, yep.
So I don't see how your excavator can get on top of that from that picture. So I mean, is it these are just short lengths? Maybe it doesn't need to get on top?
So they are shorter lengths, but the excavator will fit within the footprint of the pipe that he's digging. In other words, that pipe from outside to outside is roughly 13 feet. The excavator fits within that 13 feet, so he's not over the top of the adjacent pipe.
Is the bucket wider than the excavator in some cases?
The bucket is, it can be, yes. On some of the smaller ones, the bucket can be wider than the excavator, yes.
Hopefully that helps you, Jim. It's a lot to wrap your mind around when you don't see the actual excavator out there and
Yes.
performing it.
Yeah, if you guys got like pictures or something, you know, and as building them in stages, that would be great to see, or a video or something. It would be cool to see, just to get a better idea of how you actually build something like that.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot if you're able to physically see it take place in the field. And so I'll extend an invitation, anybody that wants to come out and take a look at it and see it. We'd love to have you out, get you down inside the boat and actually watch the process take place. And I think when you see that, you know, it all comes together. It is difficult to grasp when you're just looking at some pictures of how it all comes together.
Are you able to host a video on a link and send it out to the group?
I think we could do any of that. Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you
For
see about that? That'd be helpful if Blue Corps put actual video and then send a link out so it doesn't have to be emailed, but email a link and then we can access the video from the link. And if you had something that showed the multiple barrels like that, that'd be really interesting to see, either a time lapse or anything that you have.
We can definitely do that.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Do you have any other questions, Jim?
No, thank you. That's good. Yeah, I think that's definitely another good tool to have, especially for the underground stormwater detention.
Yeah, agreed. Anybody else on the committee have any questions regarding the cast in place concrete pipe presentation? All right, hearing none, I thank you guys again for the presentation. You're more than welcome to stick around for the remainder of it. Or you can go across the street, get lunch, whatever you'd like to do. We're gonna keep rolling though. I appreciate you guys coming in. Once Gordon there it is. We'll go ahead and roll into the items proposed to be heard, cases under consideration. This would be for agenda item number 5, cases carried forward from 2023. Case 23-09, the proposed new section 632 for water, sanitary sewer tracer wire installation and related details. This was a case that was sponsored by Warren out of Chandler. This is just for information and discussion. Warren, do you want to give any updates on this case or where we're at on this case?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The current update is the March update, so there's nothing new in the packet. So the changes that were included show what is currently drafted in for the March update. In the water and sewer working group, we had some discussion this past month regarding some of the comments that received from Glendale. I think it was your water team. Okay.
Yeah, probably our water distribution
Water
group.
distribution
Yep.
team. Some of those were related to, so right now, one of the access ports or points for the tracer wire is in a meter box. And what if a meter box is covered? How would you locate that? So there was just some discussion about maybe putting a locator ball in there. That led to some further discussion about locator balls in general and the fact that they're only guaranteed for a 10-year lifespan. Maybe they're longer, but I have not done the research in that. So, but that led to some discussion about, we had talked about meter box covers in general in the past. And since we're a lot of the agencies are going towards the alternate covers, polymer concrete, so on. Sounds like a future case maybe to put something magnetic in those covers. So that'll be a case that we'll probably introduce. Maybe I'll introduce that later this summer or next year.
And that would be so you can locate it with
Yeah,
a pin locator
Exactly.
or a
So
metal
if it does
detector.
get covered, yeah, exactly.
I think
So-
that would be a good remedy.
Right, for sure. That would solve that.
Don't they
problem.
have metal in the corners where the anchor bolts or the bolts?
If they're
Okay.
a bolt down, but some of them are
Some of them
not.
are
So
not.
yeah, so
Okay.
so that was a discussion, is maybe that would solve that potential. So the other item we discussed was whether we wanted to have a detail or tracer wire in the valve boxes. The case as written right now allows for the locator to access the wires outside of the paved areas and therefore more safe for locators. If you have long runs that you don't already have a hydrant, and most likely you'll have access points along a water or sewer. Sewer is at the services. So if for some reason you don't have access, say on a long transmission main, there is the allowance to have another above ground access wire box for those instances written into the case. So I guess the discussion was at the working group was everyone agreed that made more sense. Some of the other concerns was the fact that if a wire is in a box, then it sometimes gets twisted up in the exercising equipment, things like that. But I wanted to get it out. I'm still open to do that. It's just if some agency has a strong feeling that they want to put that in, we can look at that, or we continue to have that as a supplement in different agencies.
So maybe something like alternate method for meter box installation, or I'm sorry, valve can installation.
Yep.
The-
If we did, then we could simply put it on the current mag valve detail and just put a note there too. And then we wouldn't have to come up with necessarily a special detail for it either.
I like that.
That would be that's one
Less
option.
paper.
Yeah.
The one thing that I battled
Uh-huh.
was when the wire does come up in the can.
Yep.
From the valve nut and
Uh-huh.
it comes up, it will get twisted up in the valve key.
Right.
9 times out of 10, it'll get twisted up. Our guys actually cut them off
Yeah.
because the reward, there's more risk over reward.
Mhm.
There's the risk of getting tangled up versus what's the reward. The alternate method that I was I think I might have shared it with you, was to bring it in that annular space
Uh-huh.
between the top of the can where the hat sits on top of the can. In that AB section area. Yep,
And
that is
that's
correct.
that's similar to our current Chandler detail as well, where we bring it up high instead of down. Where it's
Yeah.
lower. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you have
Mhm.
less wire exposed to get it, to
Mhm.
get twisted up from down deep. But for the most part, you're gonna have an air relief.
Right.
You're gonna have a blow off,
Hydrants.
you're gonna have a hydrant,
Meter.
possibly a lateral, yeah, possibly a service line.
Right.
For the most part, but this is for the rare occasion that you wouldn't have that, right? Is
Right.
that,
That is a potential.
okay?
It's just one more tool.
And a lot of your distribution lines are large enough to where they have butterfly valves on them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And that is actually a manhole access point, that point. But thank you, Warren.
Sure. So are you in favor of seeing maybe at least a markup on the current mag valve adjustment detail showing on both the A or the B and C, right? Because we want to.
I'm definitely open to that. I
Okay.
think that would be a discussion for the whole committee to see if what they thought about it. I hate to see you put all that work into it or it just get shot down. But as an alternate method in the event we cannot put it outside of the
I see.
paved area, and there's no other option,
Okay.
then yeah.
Okay.
I just don't want to see contractors, coming out thinking that that's the standard. All of them got to come up in the valve can like that.
That's the concern, is, yeah, only,
Maybe that's something that's handled at the pre-construction meeting with the inspector and the contractor on board.
okay.
Hey Warren, this is Jim with Avondale. What about if we add it and just say, option, valve box option only with agency approval? And that way, it's in there. I know we do it, we use a type C valve box, and the way we got around from having the wires get tangled up, we make them drill a hole into the side of the valve box, and then they pull, basically it comes outside, and then just at the top it comes in, so we don't have a lot of wires in the box, so it seems to work okay. We may end up, once this gets adopted, we may end up getting away from it in the valve cans, but there is an instance might need it on occasion. Say you got a transmission line, it doesn't have hydrants or anything other than valves every so many 100 feet, so it may be an option to have in there, only again with agency approval, and then, eventually if we get to a point where nobody's using it, then it's easier just to delete that out of the spec than to add it at a later date. So that's just my 2 cents on it. So.
Jim, what's your feel on just modifying the existing detail to have it in there? What I'm hearing is that's probably the route to go, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, again, if one of the goals is try to eliminate agency specs, if we have this, and I got, my people are looking at this right now, then we can eliminate this from our spec. And I don't know any other city that would use it in the valve can, but there's always an instance where you might need to do that. So, that way it's in there if it wants to be used. So, only with agency approval. So it's not basically a standard for every project.
So are you guys in Avondale? Are you guys using the type C valve can?
Yeah, the 191 type C. And so we have a supplement detail, and we actually drill a hole in this valve box at the top. And so the wires just kind of stick in. So there's not a lot of wires in the actual box to get tangled. The contractors have a little bit of a hassle with drilling the hole. It's tough to drill a hole in there. They have to usually take it to their shop or whatever, but it can be done, and
refresh my memory. Is that the cast, the like 4-inch diameter cast?
yeah, I believe it's a 6-inch diameter cast iron. I know it's ductile iron can box. And it's 2-piece, so it's kind of like fits together and is adjustable.
Any reason why you guys don't prefer that one over the type A, just out of sake of conversation?
I don't know. It's just been that way for a long time. So
Possibly fitting the cover into that.
Yeah, because the type A is a larger diameter, which makes it easier to pick rocks out from around the valve nut.
I mean, it is tougher to install. You got to make sure that the can is very plumb, so you can get to so that the valve key can sit on the nut, perfect. So it is a little bit harder to install, but I think the valve boxes have a little smaller footprint, and they seem to stay put better.
Gotcha. Little harder to work with, just with the being cast and being heavy, having to drill it and everything else, but it sounds like you guys use it for other reasons. Well, thank you, Jim, for your input on that. I don't see any reason why we couldn't add a simple note and a simple modification to the existing details that are already drawn instead of reinventing the detail.
Okay.
I would be in support of that. What about some of the other voting members? Can you guys provide some of your input on whether you'd be in support of utilizing the existing details and doing a slight modification of those, or creating a new detail? What are we using out in Phoenix? Jose?
for the valve boxes?
Yeah, what's your, give me some insight, give me some, support here. What do you think about the, valve box and the tracer wire in a unique circumstance? How do you feel about utilizing the existing detail, modifying it and putting a note in, that it can be installed this particular way at the agency's discretion, for when there's no other access point for that wire? You know, if there's no other laterals, blow-offs, fire hydrants, and you're kind of, your hands being forced to use the valve can, how do you feel about modifying the existing details?
Or using the detail itself, I think it's easy if you just just modify and put a note, right? Related to the other the new details that we would be adopting. That's simple. As far as how much in practice it works for distribution, I'll let Matthew Bryan chime in as far as whether or not we want to see wires coming out through the valves. There's pros and cons, right? So
Yeah, you guys have a huge distribution system. How are you handling the tracer wire system in Phoenix?
we don't have any.
You draw a straight line from one valve to the other, right?
Yeah, we have a GIS system, and between that, if we need to, we'll connect a source to the valve and try to trace it that way. But no, it gets pretty much blue stick through GIS mapping for the most part and connecting the dots.
Yeah, no.
Good, bad, or indifferent. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, so you would be in support.
And it's not perfect, that's for sure. But
What
I don't
I'm-
know, Matthew. I
Phoenix,
don't know if you have any comments from distribution as far as
No, and that's something that I'll forward to our group and see what their thoughts are about it too, Jose. But I'm in agreement with what you're saying.
Great, great. What about Peoria? Do we have Peoria online today? Do we have Dan? I know Dan's. Yeah, you're right. Any other agencies that want to chime in on what their thoughts are on this? Because I'd like to move this forward. I just want to make sure we have the support from the committee to do that. I hate to put it on the floor and then in the 11th hour decide that we have to, you know, we're not all in agreement. I mean, it's hard to get 5 people to agree on what color the sky is. So I'd like to get everybody kind of on board now sooner than later. I'm going to open it up one more time for any of the other agencies, Surprise, Scottsdale, Tempe. I mean, all of them, Florence, even Florence. You know, anybody got anything they'd like to add or any comments? And are you guys in support of using this detail and just modifying it?
This is Robin Surprise. I'm fine with just modifying this detail.
Thank you, Rob. What are you guys doing right now out in the field in Surprise for terminating your tracer wire? Are you doing it in the valve can?
We are.
Are you bringing it up from the bottom or bringing it up from running up the outside of the valve can until you get to the hat?
Up from the bottom.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
This is all valuable information.
Well, that will be the easiest route, just to add some notes and modify that detail, so.
Anyone else want to chime in before we move on? All right, the silence is compliance. We'll go ahead and move on to new cases for 2024. This is agenda item number 6, case 24-01, miscellaneous corrections. We're looking at section 325.8, quality control, second paragraph, remove the extra space and shall. That seems like a no-brainer. Also lumped in with that case is to copy the note about scoring the concrete collar detail from 270 to 120. So for those 2 details, so we can carry over some consistency. That is also a no-brainer. I think we've discussed that in the past. And then correct the spelling errors made on the Ford crossing for detail 552. Is that?
Yeah, that's a new one that David Fritz McDot submitted.
Course versus course. Well, thank you, McDot, that was David from McDot. David Fritz, thank you, sir. Any questions from the committee regarding the miscellaneous corrections? We'll open it up for discussion real quick. All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move into agenda item number 7, case 24-03, to revise the table 714-2 microsurfacing job mix formula. This was brought to our attention by industry. We appreciate our ARPA and our attendees. So they had brought to our attention that the technical bulletin had been revised and changed originally. I believe it was well, you know what, Greg, do you want to fill us in on this?
Sure.
Instead of me?
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in your packet, you've got the handful of documents that the supporting documentation for this. First is an email talking about how it came to pass, how technical bulletin 147 from their 2008 version, the previous time it was revised, and coming all the way to the 2022 version, and the elimination of the specific gravity in regards to the microsurfacing specification. The gist behind why this was done, when this test was originally created, the gentleman that did this was specifically using a limestone product back east. And the density of the different aggregates, especially that we have out here and many other places, are much more dense than limestones. So if you kind of read through that summary email, it pretty much spells it out. It's basically exactly what we were talking about there. They could find no reason as to why 2-1 was there other than those are the aggregates he was using at a time. And for the limestone aggregates he was using there, that it could have been problematic according to his testing way back when it was done. However, when you use that same methodology and compare it to the entire national level of available aggregates, that it doesn't, most of them, there's a lot of them that couldn't even meet the requirements of 2.1 as a maximum, and they took it out. And that's kind of them talking about the two different versions.
Greg, if I can interrupt you for a second, what I noticed reading through the original publication for the technical service bulletin or technical bulletin was the specific gravity greater than the 2.10. As I mentioned, it seemed to me that was designed to keep that material from moving within the matrix or to sit at a certain level within that matrix. But then, and I'm not here to debate that. I just wanted to bring it to light. That's what it appeared to me. But then in the 2022 revision, that was no longer a concern. Is that due to the modified polymers or the modified oils that we're using, or it's just not a concern at all? Can you elaborate on that?
They basically, if you look at the end of paragraph 2, so after much internal discussion themselves, they didn't feel that the specific gravity test in that regard had any bearing on the performance of it. That 2.1 using limestones and the consolidation under that could have been problematic way back when the test was originally created, or the reason why they thought it would be detrimental to those limestones if it was there. But then after coming back, the reason they removed it completely is because after much discussion internally and looking at that as the why behind the what, they decided they didn't even believe that it was relevant to any performance criteria, and that's why they removed it.
Yeah, usually specific gravity is a good thing, right? All right, so really what this case is doing is to eliminate that maximum just to come in alignment with
the revision,
the new
22
22
revision to the same technical bulletin that is referenced in MAG. That's all it is doing, is just updating to the newest one that no longer has that requirement.
And I think that would be a great move. I'm in 100% support of it. I ran it through my materials team or my people with materials background. They said, hey, if we're going to reference the latest and greatest technical bulletin, we need to rely on them being the subject matter experts and come in alignment with that. You feel the same way, Warren? Well, I'm going to open this up for discussion to the committee. Does anybody have any questions on this one that they would like to ask Greg or the committee while we're here?
This is Jose with Phoenix. Thanks, Greg and everybody else putting the information together. I think it just makes sense, like everybody's been saying. So, we had some internal discussion here at the lab too. We don't see any issue with it. So.
Great, thank you, Jose. Yeah, Greg and the Asphalt Working Group, we appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? I'm going to leave that open for one more moment, and then I'm going to suggest we get this up for action. All right, hearing none. Gordon, I'd like to move this on the next agenda for action.
Okay, I'll add it. The
Thank
next
you.
agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. All right, items proposed to be heard outside of right-of-way cases under consideration. We have the new vegetated rock, or vegetated or rock bioswales. This one was, I think, Peter, were you working on this one, or was it Brashear?
On this one, hold on a second. That one we had, City of Tempe, I think on that one. Yeah. Yes.
We had Brashear on that.
Yeah, I don't think we had any changes from the last revisions. What you've got there is the revised 321, which we got all the corrected. I think Gordon made some minor changes on the numbering. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, we did that last month. So
Yeah.
some change from last month. Eric Bonds with the City of Tempe has provided me with the AutoCAD detail, the final version that you're seeing here. So we're just waiting for any final comments, and otherwise.
Yeah, I think we're getting close to the point where we're ready for a vote on it.
When's the last time we've received any comments on this item? Has it been a couple weeks, a couple months?
Few months.
Okay, so it's probably pretty close to going then.
Yeah.
Gene,
Yes.
I had meant to send comments after last month and I failed to do that, but I've got them sitting in front of me. I'll scan them and send them over after our meeting today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, let's get those over, and I'd like to see this one. This one was carried over from last year. I know it's getting close. I know the team, the outside right-of-way working group team has a lot invested into it. I want to make sure it's clean and ready to go. So yeah, if you can get those comments over, we can address those at the next meeting, and then we might be looking at action shortly after.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else have any questions or comments they want to make on the vegetated rock or rock bioswales case? All right, hearing none, we're going to move to agenda item number 9, the outside of right of way. This is the 23-10. This is the thermoform PVC drain basins. I think we're pretty close on this one as well. From what I recall, the last, I know I had a comment regarding the sleeper slab or the adjustment on the top for the frame and cover, or the slatted frame, the inlet, I should say. Has there been any updates or any changes to this?
I spoke with Nick Burton this morning, and what Gordon has up now are the current markups from City of Phoenix, correct? So according to Nick, he just hasn't gotten to it, but he will have his engineer draftsman work through these and then work through at the next working group to finalize an update for the next committee meeting.
It's refreshing to see that somebody had sat down.
Very good comments, yes.
Took the time.
I agree.
Evaluated, made the comments, shared them with the group. This is what we really rely on here as a committee is everybody, not one, not two, not three people pulling the weight, everybody helping out. So that's great to see. Looks like you guys have your work ahead of you going
There's a few
through
comments.
each one of those.
Yeah, the only comment I know I've got to get added is from our last meeting here. Adding that detail of the frame grate support, make sure that's in there. I think it's shown, but it's not explicit. I did go back and look at the existing grade adjustments and the existing details 422.1, 537. And I think all we need to do really is add that same detail that we see in the current MAG standards, the cross section of the support in the concrete.
Go down just a little bit, Gordon, right there. What does that say for the refer to section for the concrete? I'm looking at the concrete sleeper pad. What are the concrete adjustment? What did you guys come up with on that? Just 8-inch minimum thick? Did you guys, did we decide to assign a mag concrete to it?
I thought we had that in the spec component, but I'll have to go look.
Maybe a mag A or something?
Well, I'm not sure if we put it on the detail or if it's in the standard language.
Okay.
And maybe I hate to duplicate on both places. We should have a reference to it if not. Let me recheck.
Yeah, I'm used to seeing that note on the details.
Yeah, I'll have to get in and look. Slash backfill. I'm looking through it now.
Put you on the spot, Peter. Just make a
That's
note.
it. Yeah, that's okay. I'm just checking as quick as I can, running through it. I'm not finding it, so that's a good catch. Concrete type. Thank you.
Yes, yes, sir.
If I remember, I think maybe Nick mentioned that it was 3,000 PSI.
Yeah.
In the ones that they
Should be.
but I don't know.
Meg A.
I don't know if it's actually spec'd anywhere or not. But
Yeah, it should be Meg A on there.
Yeah, for the type of traffic it's gonna be seeing in a parking lot or
Yeah.
not an arterial roadway, there's no reason to be over a mag A with it that I can, think of, especially at 8 inches thick.
No, it's gonna be very similar to a valley gutter type of situation.
Exactly. Does anybody else from the committee have any questions for Peter or for this, or any comments toward this case? I encourage everybody to take back to their team and their subject matter expert and do what Phoenix did, mark it up and feed those back into the working group if there are any comments.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've got comments to work on. I know Nick, and as Warren said, Nick's working on those now. It was a time situation. We've got the next, well, I'll talk about it in a little bit, the next meeting coming up. Hopefully we can go over the final details. And if there's any new thing, it'd be nice to have it before that meeting.
Agreed. Thank you, Peter. Okay, we'll move into the next outside of right-of-way case for 2024. This is 24-A, retention basin spillway, details 510-1 and -2. Move detail 222. I'm not super familiar with this one. Peter, can you give me a quick brief description on this one?
Yes, we've got a cover letter that goes with it quickly. There we go. So what we have done, this was a missing piece. A few years ago, we, as the committee had adopted MAG details 227, which is the sedimentation basin component of it that goes in there. We had the adoption of the curb cuts. We had a missing piece in between. At the time, we did show a spillway, but it was requested later that why don't we come up with a separate detail for the spillway to connect it in. So this is that missing piece that we had from before, which is the spillway. The current MAG standards do not have spillway details. This would be primarily outside of right-of-way. There's two options involved here. One is the curb cut, which goes into the MAG detail 226. And then the second one shown second is where it would go, it'd lead from behind the scupper. So what we're doing is using the concrete ones now. We know that there's going to be some others, but as we want to populate this book, we know that we're going to have to come up with versions for riprap type spillways. But this is kind of the start of getting a MAG standard in the outside right of way for the spillway component. As a part of this, though, we thought we should add in, it was a good idea by Gordon to move the existing detail 227 into the outside right of way. If the spillway's outside the right of way, the sedimentation basin is definitely outside the right of way. So it seemed like they should really go together. So this one's an already adopted MAG standard. We would just adjust it over to where we've now got a book for that.
So Peter, could we see this spillway, this detail tied to the back of a, say, right-of-way scupper?
Yes, that would be the -2 detail.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the back of scupper version.
And that would be a good go-to, and if the slopes weren't cooperating, and you had to slow water down, you'd start with one of these spillways and move into more of a riprap or angular rock or something before it hit the bottom of that.
Yeah, or we could, and again, we do need to come up with a riprap version. The thought was, let's get something moving forward toward the concrete, and then we can put together for next year the riprap versions.
Great.
So this has gone through a couple of rounds of internal review. We did get some comments on it. So the committee's gone back and forth on this one for a few months, and I think we felt it was ready during our last meeting to present this as a case for the committee on whole. So it's open for comments, really. It's a brand new case to be looked at, start reviewing, get it to staff to look at and see what if we accomplished enough or do we need to do more.
I'll look a little closer at it myself and look at the structural portion or the rebar and the thickness and whatnot. And I'll put put my eyes on it and make any comments I have. I know Warren had something he wanted to mention.
Yeah, I was just remembering back, obviously that curb opening detail, even the bioswale detail and a few others came about a few years back with the presentation from the LID, low impact development toolkit, that had a number of details, and there was definitely encouragement to incorporate some of those into MAG. Curb opening was one of those low hanging fruits that we got in. It was easier than the bioswale, for example.
Yeah.
So my only question is, so we're talking about moving it from the regular MAG into the outside of MAG, right?
Not the curb cut. The curb cut's staying. That's in the right of way.
Okay, so the curb.
This would just be that sediment trap that sits on the downhill side, on the bottom of the basin.
Because technically you could use that curb opening detail in the right of way and outside the right of way.
True.
So, all right.
Yeah, that's correct. We don't typically see curb openings in the right of way.
Not so much, but I think like I've seen it in certain agencies to have it in a median opening or just outside.
Yeah.
I've seen it, even Mesa, I think, has been using in that particular detail.
Okay. Yeah, if we can help accommodate both of those, that would be great.
Yeah, as said, this is all part of what led from the LID handbook development, and moving it from the design handbook component to the construction detail components now. As we start going through the LID book, we would like to get a couple of these in a year and start getting the construction details in.
Thank you, Peter. Does anybody with the committee have any questions regarding this detail? And like the previous one, I encourage you to take it to your subject matter experts and beat it up and mark it up and get it back over to Peter and the working group for more discussion or more definitely to help improve it if it needs to be, or at least a comment, hey, yeah, it looks great. But I'm going to open it up for any other questions.
I just wanted to mention that the notes on the current case are there just because we don't know, right now if the detail is moving, but if it is moving and the new details are approved, then they need to reference back to each other. So for example, here, would reference those new spillway details. And conversely, rather than referencing the mag detail, if it moves in the outside right-of-way book, then you would reference it.
And the number would then change on the sediment trap too, because in the outside right of way, that would be our series 500.
So they would reference each other.
Yeah.
Right away. And then the right of way would reference the outside of right of way application. The outside of right of way application could reference the right of way application.
Technically, yes, that's how we'd have to be looking at it. We always have to track these things down, but as it says right there, right now, as Gordon pointed out, it says spillway per civil plans, that would then change to spillway C outside right away 510-1 or -2, whichever one is appropriate.
That makes perfect sense.
That would be -1. I take that back.
All right, any other discussion from other committee members on this? All right, hearing none, we're gonna move into items proposed to be heard, other items. This is agenda item number 11, working group reports. We'll go ahead and start with the water sewer working group for upcoming meetings. You want to go ahead and discuss what you have coming up?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So the Water and Sewer Working Group met on March 19th, online only. So we had further discussion, good discussion on Warren's case with the locator wire. So I'm not going to go into all that detail. And we had other items we're considering for new cases coming up is some revisions to section 602 presented by Arvid for using FRP pipe as a casing material. So we had some pretty good discussion on that. Related to that, and that's basically the larger diameter stuff. I don't know, Arvid, if you're on, you want to make any comments on that to the group here?
Yeah, Jim, so what we're looking to do is offer to the agencies current technologies with regards to casing options. So we've always had steel casing. We're going to be offering now FRP as a casing, which is used fairly regularly in the market as an alternative to steel, just because the costs are comparable, and certain times you want that FRP instead of steel for conductivity concerns. And then the other is we're going to be offering a mechanical joint steel casing, which is currently being used in the railroad community through AREMA. It's a locking joint. There's two companies that make a mechanical joint pipe that will snap together, which is incredibly valuable when it comes to the need to get casing installed under railroad right-of-ways with large zone A's, where you have to be able to install that footage, oftentimes 100 feet within a nonstop operation. And so you want to have a process and procedure in place that affords you to do that with as little time as possible, because welding takes time and just slows the operation down. So the mechanical steel casing joints are the solution for that problem. So you'll see that we'll be submitting at the working group this month, the final draft of that, and then do a final review. And hopefully by next month, you'll have a review of it for the committee.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So so everyone, you could expect a new case on this one, hopefully within next month. And then kind of related to that, we got another draft case for section 479, which would be I think that's 749. Is that right, Gordon? I think that's a typo there.
I think you're correct. Gordon stepped out for a moment.
So basically, it's just another alternate material, FRP pipe. We have a representative from Hobos Pipe that, they've been using this stuff for a number of years now. So I think it's a good time to, overdue time to put it in a mag as an alternate pipe. Again, it's usually just for larger diameter applications because it's not cost effective for the smaller diameters. So, I don't know, maybe it's possible, you could use it in the outside right-of-way group for stormwater detention, but it's kind of been used already for storm drain, large storm drain in some agencies. So just see that as another opportunity, another pipe material we're gonna throw into mag. The other ones we're working on, is the sewer video testing, mandrels. Polymer concrete manhole basis, and possible revision on that to just make that a better product. We're still looking at revising the manhole cover details with framing covers. And the possibility of making those lighter. I know we've had some good discussions on that. So we didn't have any discussions on that issue though this time. So another ones that we didn't discuss, but it's still in the on the agenda for possible discussion at these is a PEX-A pipe for services in the right of way. And we had some discussion again outside right of way on these detention tanks. Gordon, is Gordon back yet?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey Gordon, didn't we have guy? I lost my notes I took from the meeting. Didn't we have some guys from Blue Corps were there too?
Yeah, I think they attended the meeting. And also for the Zach Hubbard, I think he's with Contact.
Yeah.
He was discussing some of the work he's doing on those other specifications, the 621, the CMP pipe.
Yeah, which was encouraging. He had a really good, good presentation, very technical. So Contact, who is a manufacturer of CMP pipe, they're coming up with some revisions. I think they realize some of the issues, and so they're coming up with some revisions, which is good, make a better product. And with coatings on the pipe. I think one of them is a polymer coating. I know polymer is used in everything nowadays, but so they're looking at putting coatings on the pipe that you could order with the coating on it, again to help with the longevity. So it's encouraging to see CMP pipe that they're it looks like they're gonna be coming up with some improvements. And again, some of it's in mag currently and it needs some updates. There's some out of date ASTM specs and that. So that's one thing we'll look at doing is updating, upgrading the CMP stuff. So that was a good discussion we had. I think that was about it. Oh, we had a little presentation from some people that have a admixture that goes in concrete for manholes, like specifically sewer manholes. It's an antimicrobial. It's like a waterproofing and antimicrobial admixture that's actually mixed in the mix that apparently has some properties, to withstand the HS2O gases from the sewer. So, and that's integral, it's not really a coating aftermarket or after coating. It's part of the manufacturing process. So that's interesting. We got another option for manhole, sewer manholes. I think it's still a ways there's not much ASTM on it yet. So it was interesting to know that there's this stuff's coming up. So it's nice to have more choices. That was about it. So our next meeting is going to be since April has 5 Tuesdays, we typically will go to the 4th Tuesday of the month instead of the 3rd. So our planned meeting is April 23rd at 1:30 online. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Who were you working with when you mentioned the additive for the manhole bases?
I don't know, Gordon, we can probably look up that name, and get it to you.
Top of your head.
But it was interesting. I'd like to see some more data on it. And maybe you can see it.
It obviously wouldn't, I think you mentioned it wouldn't be a substitute for epoxy coating or T-lock or any other type of.
Well,
tile.
they were, I think, Gordon, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were stating it would be a substitute for it, so you wouldn't need to use it, so,
Yeah, I recall that as well. And I should have the email of the gentleman who did the presentation, so I can.
Yeah,
get
I'm
that to
curious,
people.
curious to know where that's coming from.
yeah, I think they need to kind of maybe reach out to some of the manhole, the precast companies, that make the precast manhole sections, the vertical sections, and, see if they'll start using it and see how it works, so.
So it'd be an alternative to, it sounds like it'd be an alternative to, say, Armor Rock. Or potentially.
Yeah, it would be different. That's a whole different material. That's basically a in polymer concrete manhole precast section. This is something I guess would get mixed with the conventional concrete. I think that's what it was, I recall. So it's just another admixture you could put in the concrete when they use it to form up to make these precast sections for the vertical manhole shafts that you could order, I guess, as an alternate. So it's interesting.
Yeah, loop me in on that early. I'd like to see where it's coming from and what that product is.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Jim. We'll move to the asphalt materials and concrete working group. That's gonna be Greg.
I'll start off.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So our topics for our working group on March 21st, we talked about case 2403 that we discussed earlier. The rest of them are really kind of falling into this newer potential cases. We believe we have some language, even after we put the notes out, on MAG section 710 for liquid anistrip use. We believe we've got some language to safeguard against some things that we're going to talk about at the next working group too. Providing we get consensus of that we believe we can bring that as a case next month. So it'll be talking about mineral admixtures, liquid anistrips, or the combination thereof. And then we've got some language in there to safeguard. We believe we've come to a consensus, but we'll find out at the next working group how far along in that consensus we actually are. So look for that one to come along. The next couple topics we talked about were, and I know we talked about it at the last meeting, was trying to further MAG section 719 and 326 to kind of more align with some of the EVAC offerings in the polymer modified sections. Kind of needs a little help here with direction. And Jim, sorry you couldn't make that meeting, but I guess I have a question. The way they're looking at the acceptance side of that for that particular, the way EVAC handles it, we're a little taken back as how would we try and meld those two specs together when it comes to like the air voids, specifically the mixture voids, and how we should kind of approach that. What, do you have an opinion on that?
I don't know. Do you think we can do a standalone? That maybe probably have to be a separate spec altogether for acceptance criteria. What do you think?
We were kind of talking about that too, but then didn't want to, that would probably be the way to go. Looking at it, I'm not sure what we would label that exactly. But that's kind of the thought and kind of the direction we were looking for. So we'll work on that one again at the next working group and kind of take that approach. And see what we can get drafted. That one's going to take a little bit of time though. Kind of put those two together. The next one that's come up, knowing also that EVAC is looking at doing this in their change this next year, and it came up quite a few times this winter, is the minimum paving temperatures that we have across the MAG specs. 321 and 326 both still say 40 degrees in the shade. And MAG 325, which nobody's using wet process rubber right now. For the most part, the county does a little bit still. That one's at 50. The thought was, should those move up? EVAC is looking to do it for sure on the polymer modified mixes. With the caveat, you use a warm mix additive if you want to pave at temperatures that are lower than that as approved by the engineer. what is the committee, does anybody in the committee have an opinion or comment they'd like to make in regards to that?
That is a tough one.
It's a tough
Well,
one.
I do think you need the admixture alternative because we were faced with that last month and luckily it warmed up enough, but the contractor was prepared to utilize it if necessary. So I think, yeah, it needs, that would be good. It needs to be added if we bring it into MAG, it should come in with that admixture for cold, but I think they should go up a little bit, to be honest with you.
Would that be make them all 50 degrees across the board, make them all consistent unless an additive, or just for the polymer modifieds, or?
The consistency would be, it would be beneficial in its own sense.
I agree.
Yeah, I just think 40 is too cold, maybe 45 for the conventional mixes.
Got to make your asphalt hotter.
Yeah, I would, yeah.
You know, and it says that, and somebody's taking a gun and you're reading it and the wind's howling, even at those lower temperatures. That's when it really gets to be problematic because it's really not even that temperature.
Yeah, and you
The
can
ground is cold. It sucks heat out of no matter what you got on top of it rather quickly.
It does, and you can only go, I mean, thicker is better, but you can only go so hot till you're
That's,
smoking
you can
blue.
only go so hot. There's a number of different things that are doing that. What,
Yeah, because then you're going to be having to do maximum temperatures. So.
Exactly. Yeah, and then you'll have.
well, we kind of have those controlled by design anyway. Those are in there. We don't have an actual limit on it, but nonetheless, too hot can be too hot and be even more detrimental. Would 50 be reasonable across all three? Is that?
Before I answer that question,
Yeah.
what is ADOT? Is it 65 and rising, or?
Depends on, so they've got a couple different,
do.
see, the flip side is ADOT uses the majority of what they do for their base mixes are all 416, 417, and they're basically end product mixes, which means, hey, we don't care when you put it down as long as you make sure you hit all the performance criteria. Where 9 times out of 10, that contractor is not going to, he doesn't have an owner on top of him saying, well, it's 41 degrees today, you better start paving. Well, I don't think it's a good idea. Well, it says you can. There's two different scenarios. Whereas those guys won't risk it on a day that's 42 degrees and the wind's blowing. They'll be just like, you know what? I know I'm not going to fight it. And it's right. And it's all, we're at risk. It's my risk.
It is, yes.
And that's kind of where we're at. So they don't really have one except for their like ACFCs and a lot of that stuff. SMAs are going to have those. But those are much higher than 50 too. They are 65. for
Yeah,
APM.
I recall for some reason 65 degrees and
Minimum.
rise. It's
Yeah.
been
For
a few minutes since I've
for
done
that
ADOT
thinner
work.
one. That they're now not doing anymore either.
I would, now to answer the question,
Okay.
I would be in support of 50 degrees, absolutely. Other committee members, what's your thought on this?
I'd support raising it. And maybe we need to polish up the exact, where you take it. Is it in the truck? Is it on? I don't know if I have to. I don't have it in front of me, but is it clear where you're supposed to measure this temperature at?
It says, if I remember correctly, Jim, it says in the shade, in a shaded spot too, so that in theory, your sunlit area would be even higher. So that's how it's currently written.
Yeah, but is that in the truck or is it after it's laid down or when?
No, that's
Surface?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna assume that it was at the surface, but I wasn't sure.
No, it is. So it's a surface temp in the shade. It doesn't say by what mechanism you need to develop your shade. It just says in the shade.
Yeah, I have to look at it again. It's been I think, I don't know. I just thought it could be a little more clear as far as where the inspector or the lab tech should be, taking this just to be consistent. So.
Well, depending on who's wanting to do what, I've seen them taken next to a running vehicle in their wheel well when you're trying to get temperature.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can argue that, well, we're just responsible for the acceptance criteria, if the cores pass, we're good. But The problem is the Corps, again, is just representative and, you know, you still need to have some guidelines just to start off from out the gate to make sure you got a good project or good product that's applied overall.
Well,
You know,
absolutely correct. And, you know, the contractor, as the contractor is out there, okay, we might have 50 degrees and rising, watching the Doppler radar with a storm coming in and the, you know, or temperatures dropping. That's when the contractor makes that decision. We just can't risk it. We're not going to get the compaction, the required compaction. We're not going to meet the performance measures, and the contractor would make that call. But I don't see any issue with moving the temperature to 50 degrees.
And there would still be with, you know, approval of the engineer and the use of a warm mix additive, you could pave at lesser temperatures if you so choose. That way, everybody's got the best, you know, as you said, Mr. Chairman, you give them the best opportunity to get the product down and give them the best chance.
As long as
You get it
in there, yes.
Hey, Greg, this is Jose. Did you get an input from the AGC on this already? Do
That's
they have
act-
any?
Yes, that's actually where some of it, I think there was some cross commentary that came through both actually AGC and ours.
And they're just looking for some clarity too, or
Need to
across the board?
So we didn't talk about across the board, other than they
Okay.
like to see it raised.
Jose, this is Brian. Yeah, we've had contractors get pushback from, you know, certain commercial owners, right? Saying we have to pay, we have to make a schedule, and we're saying it's too cold, and they said that as per mag. So we're looking for. It's always tough to try to be at that bottom end and get the end result that we all want.
Well, that's where, Brian, that's where I think the language that Greg was talking about, the exception language would be beneficial. So it's not a hard 50 degrees. It's 50 degrees unless the additive or engineering.
Yeah, unless the use of a warm mix additive is used and approved by the engineer.
There you go. Bingo.
Something, I don't know, that's probably not the language to use.
No,
but
it's
something
pretty
along those
close.
lines. Yeah, something along those lines.
How do you feel about that, Brian?
No, I think that'd work.
Okay. We will.
Yeah, it helps give the inspector more tools too.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I was just wanted to get the input on the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, because we had a job recently, and I'm not kidding. The contractor just proceeded with putting down. It was cold. You could, after the first pass, you could put your hand on it, and it's like, what are you doing? And you know, the lab guy's shaking his head, and you know, it's just, you know. And but the thing is it wasted 3 weeks. You know, while we had a court and find out and say, hey, guess what? You know, you don't meet density. You know, and it's just, it was a waste of time. You know, and it's just, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and this one would raise that temperature up and then give you the discretion, or give the inspector or the engineer, the engineer's representative, the discretion. I
Yeah.
like, it sounds like a step in the right direction with the temperature, with that added language in there.
You know, and I know agencies, sometimes we're hesitant to stop contractors, you know, it's, some do, some don't, but you know, this way, if you're taking the temperature and you note it as, hey, you're putting it down below, you know, or what's required, you know, they document it, and then it just gives you more, you know, more ammunition if you need it, you know, if you have to fight about it later, so.
More tools.
Yeah, no, but I would think the intent that we all try to avoid is to make sure it doesn't go down, right? So that way nobody's in that uncomfortable position. Say you got to tear this out.
Well, yeah, exactly. So.
Awkward conversation. All right. Thanks, Jim. Thank you, Jose. Greg.
Thank you. We will move forward with discussion on that. I will turn it over to Mr. Hearn here to talk about bullet point number 5.
So at the end of our last meeting, working group meeting, one of the volumetric mixer operators was in our meeting, and he basically was bringing to us the there's a relatively new in the valley product that's being used that some of the ready mix producers are trying to utilize. And if you remember, we had some conversation recently about skid resistance on plates and liability and potential damages and, things like that. And we're even talking about the possibility of changing the wording in MAG to put some sort of skid resistant coat, something on. Anyway, one of the things that has been used for a long time in other parts of the country, hasn't really been used too much here in Phoenix that I'm aware of, or in Maricopa County, is what we call rapid setting slurries, right? The concept behind this would be contractor could go in, make his cut, do the work he needs to do, put a CLSM down, right? And have that product compact, I guess I would say. I wouldn't say set up, but I guess that's really what it's doing in a short period of time, to where he could come in and put paving on top of it, close the street back up basically in the same day without having to put down any sort of traffic control devices or anything else, kind of thing. And these products are available out there and have been, some of the exciting admixtures we have now can do that. The ideal would be the product would still need to be excavatable. I mean, I could do it by adding more cement to it, right? And
Right.
kind of thing. We don't want to do that. We want to maintain our 1.5 sack, 2 sack kind of cement content. So later on, it'd still be excavatable, but you want to try to set off, hydrate that material as quickly as possible, and then it reaches its maximum and it's done. Doesn't do any more. It doesn't continue. Anyway, he's had some of these products and he's been using it. He's been having issues with inspection staff still wanting to hold the contractor to the 24 to 48 hour time frame to come back and put paving on top of it. I guess most of it is a misunderstanding or not understanding how the material works and so on and so forth. So he was basically asking for some guidance. How do we do that? We had the city of Phoenix in the meeting with us, kind of thing, and he had particularly been dealing with city of Phoenix inspection people. Anyway, so we had some general conversation about that. And personally, industry thinks it's a great tool, another tool, right? Not something to be used all the time because it is expensive, but certainly it's cost effective when you're talking about having to wait, 24, 48 hours, and the potential liability that could be out there with weather and other things that could go on. The horror stories we've all seen of the plates moving and, there's no skid resistance to it and you end up with an accident, and now we got a big problem. Anyway, that's the whole idea behind it. These were originally developed for fiber optics kind of things, where you could come in and where you have a lot of runs that you have to do down main thoroughfares at times when you want to come in there, do a section, be able to each day start and complete the section. So you're not trying to put traffic control down, do the next section, that kind of thing, but still make the material excavatable at some point in time, not where it would be, rock hard concrete in there.
Yeah, that's
kind of
going to be the key.
kind of
I'd
scenario, right?
like to see information on that in the future.
When we revised 728 the last time, we put some language in there that it will allow, we put the generic language in there for the default of what a CLSM should be, but we also put some language in there saying, hey, you could use alternate materials and other methods as long as you have engineered approval. We also were very careful to say that you can't use returned concrete or grout or something else that would be too strong for the application just because you might have it, right? No, this needs to be, that's not controlled low strength material. That's not an alternative. So we put language in there specifically to prevent that from happening, kind of thing. So
this is an additive that's added at the plant or on site?
No, well, for the volumetric guys, it is integral as part of the slip. For most ready mix producers, due to the nature of the material, many times it gets added to the mixer truck on the site because you want to control how that product reacts. Unfortunately, many times when you take slurry out to the site, the contractor may or may not be ready for it. And the truck sits there for a little while things kind of, oh shit, the truck is here. Here we go. We got to get ready. Well, these materials do their thing in the truck, out of the truck. It doesn't matter. It's going to do what it's going to do once that additive's been added. So many times the ready mix people will add it on the job site and mix it in and then place it. For the volumetric guys, they're making the concrete in front of you. It's on demand. It's something that they're making right there on site. So it really lends itself to that kind of placement for those guys, because they're making it fresh right on the site, you know, whatever you need kind of scenario. So it works really well for that kind of application.
So
But it could be done either way. Absolutely could be done either way, but it's integral.
yeah, what I'm hearing is that it really accelerates the hydration process, but not necessarily affect the strength process or the.
Correct.
end
It only
grain.
gets 2 sack. It only gets the potential of whatever cement's in there, 1.5 sack, 2 sack, whatever it is. It's not going to give you higher strengths. It's going to use up the material that's in there and you're done.
And to your defense, I don't know where the 24-hour or 48-hour came from.
Well, it's,
Uh,
if you go into the 600 in about the placement of it, there's a language in there about 24 to 48 hours, but it's also language in there about there's various ways you can determine whether it's ready to be placed upon. And one of them is the boot test, where you take an, and I'm serious, it's
Very
written in the
ambiguous.
specification. An average size person can walk over the slurry and not leave a 1/4 inch indentation with their boots, and okay, you can pave over top of that.
you put that steel wheel vibratory roller on it and it'll tell you real quick. if
You,
it's
you
ready
can
or
do
not.
that too. You can use a penetrometer to do it. You know, there's a number of different ways you could do that.
Okay.
Scientific, a little more scientifically, but honestly, the boot test does work. You got a 200-pound guy who's walking over it, and if it's solid, go ahead and place over it. So anyway, we just wanted to, pardon me? We just wanted to make other agencies aware of it, because they may start seeing mixed designs with this kind of, for this kind of purpose being brought to the agencies to say, for this specific application, here's a specific mix design that could be used for it. It has this additive in it. It's designed to get a faster set time so that, you know, you could proceed with the work that needs to be done, kind of thing. Not to be used in everyday work necessarily, but just another option, another
can see the
tool in the
benefit.
toolbox that could be readily used. And I personally, when I was in the ready mix business, had a couple different mixes that we did this with when I was in Southern California, and it worked great. The County of Orange loved it. It was,
I can see the
for
benefit.
a number of reasons, and contractors did too. They could do their work and be gone, you know, be done, come back the next day and start again.
Fair enough. Like I mentioned, I can see the benefit of it, and I would be willing to use it, absolutely. The 24 to 48 hour mark, I've had plates sitting out there in the wintertime for 4 or 5 days waiting for half sack slurry to cure out.
But that's the thing, Gene, that you understand is it's so related to temperature. It's so related to
Absolutely.
how much water was in the mix to begin with. It's so related to the soil conditions, you know, how free draining on the soil conditions do it. I mean, there's so many other things that relate to how that happens. But if
This
we can
would
get the
mitigate
cement that's
that.
in there to do its thing, it takes those mitigating factors away.
I like it. All right.
So it was just up to us. We don't really think we need a case. We don't need to think we need to make any changes to 728. It would just be, just like anything else, it would be a hybrid mix design that would be brought to the city for approval for this particular application. And then inspection people, contractor, we just have to communicate with them that here's the product is going to be used today, and here's how it's used.
So in other words,
It's going to be different.
the municipality should expect to see submittals in the future on that product.
Right.
Jeff, I do have a question on that. If you've got some information on those additives, we would really like to see that. I still do a lot of research with backfills and slurries, and actually finished a fairly large power industry study. So if you do have that information, especially technical information, I'd love to see that, because it has much more application than that. Plus, the utilities will be very interested to see if they can use that around the conduits for a power situation. And it also comes down to sometimes how does it affect thermal dissipation of heat. So we'd be very, very interested to see any data on that.
I think some of these products have been used by SRP in the past, but as you just mentioned, the biggest issue that I seem to be hearing recently in slurries in particular is the thermal measuring the thermal
Dissipation, yeah, so the ability to get the heat, because once those lines run, you got to get the heat out of them, and that when they're below ground. So yeah, anything you've got, personally, I'd be very interested because we're continuing a lot of industry research on that.
Okay, I'll see if I can get you a mix design or two.
Yeah, the my unfortunate thing is our two committees meet almost identical times, so I can't get to your committee all the time.
Well, we're not anticipating having much more discussion about this. This just happened to be a open discussion that we
Thank
had
you.
on the subject, but I'll certainly talk to some of the Ready Mix guys and see if I can get you copies of mix designs that would tell you exactly what they all get ouchy about it, because it's kind of like, you know, they have to give you what's in the mix design, but it's not quite proprietary, but they all have their own secret concoctions that they like to do, you know, kind of thing. But
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll get you some information.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. All right, well, Peter, don't go on mute.
Nope.
You're up next, outside of right-of-way working group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had our meeting on the 15th of February, and we did have the presentation by Blue Core that you saw, an abbreviated version of that presentation, and talked to them quite a bit. So as part of what our meeting, that took up a bit of time, but we did get through the discussion in terms of the vegetated rock bioswale details and the thermal bodied PVC catch basins. There were short discussions. Obviously, vegetated, we didn't have anything new except Eric getting in the new the CAD detail, and then of course thermal bodied PVC. You had the discussion on that. Other cases, though, we did discuss would be what you saw today was a spillway detail and moving the sedimentation trap. We've already had the discussion on that today. Extended discussions on the detention tanks, and with Keith Kesty and Zach Hubbard talking about where they are at this point. But a large part of that discussion, I think, was brought up by Jim on the water and sewer one, where the Keith and Zach had looked at the existing CMP standards, and that I think we got them enough direction where that will be a MAG case, not an outside right-of-way case. That would be the updating of the CMP standards. So they'll be preparing that and having that ready. It can come through either group, but it's really a badly needed update of the existing CMP and corrugated standards that we have to get them far more modern. So we spent quite a bit of time looking at those. Other cases that will be coming up, we did get initial discussions and drafts on the stormwater harvesting basins that Tim Connor and Wayne Colby are working on that. We'll continue working on that in our next version. The infiltration trenches, we did do a revised detail, and that brought up some other discussions. It's really going to be one that it'll allow different options for use of infiltration, either trenches or pits, to accentuate and improve percolation, or to transport nuisance water away from road edges, things like that. So we've got the basic ones. We're waiting for comments to come back. That elicited something that was talked about in this committee's meeting last time, and we didn't talk about it, but we will be talking about, which is the temporary retention basin detail that would be an outside right of use for construction. City of Chandler has that detail. We have it in hand, and I think there'd be some good options on adding the infiltration trench detail. So some of these are going to start tying together very nicely. In our next meeting, we'll be talking a little bit more about the temporary retention along with the infiltration trenches. We didn't talk much on, we had kind of a shorter meeting because we had the presentation, so we didn't really get too far into some of the other discussions. But we do have our next meeting coming up on the 18th. I'm going to move that up to noon, Gordon, so I can, because we're going to try to do that as a joint virtual and person attendance. Want to move that up to noon so we can actually get lunch delivered to the MAG office. And we found out before 11 o'clock, it's really hard to get food delivered. So we're going to move that to a noon meeting on the 18th. I'm open for any questions at this point.
Good call, Peter, on the noon lunch. real quick on those infiltration trenches, is there any kind of filter fabric or anything that's utilized to separate the finer material from the coarser material, or not necessarily?
Correct that. And so the detail right now that we're working on does show filter fabric wrapping all of those. And what the filter fabric is, that there's some options that have been shown right now. That's part of what we're discussing. What should that filter fabric be? What are its properties? Same with the backfill itself. There's 3 different standards we found on the open graded gravel backfills. One wasn't even open graded, it was just ABC. But PAG had a standard on that in terms of the rock gradation, which was quite nice. So we're looking at, do we have one standard? Do we have multiple gradations, or do we have a performance requirement for it?
All right, thank you, Peter. All right, we're gonna move into agenda item number 12, newer potential cases for 2024. Looks like it might get a little busy. Try to move through these pretty quickly. A few of these are mine. We'll start with this detail here. This is the detail 302-1 and 302-2, the joint restraints with tie rods. There's a couple concerns that I have with this detail is I have not seen this detail implemented since probably 2005. It's like the unicorn. We used to talk about it, but we never see it. If you go to the next page, which is 302-2, there's reference to using cadmium plating, which has been outlawed for quite some time for generally every use except for aerospace. The ASTM that's referenced, the A165, doesn't even exist. So just a quick summary on this. I've reached out to some of the supply houses and I've been working with one in particular. I'll be candid, it's Core & Main, and they have not sold this type of application since they can even remember. They said that basically everything nowadays is the technology nowadays with the restraints has come along so far with Megalug and Armadillo and Field Lock and just that this is an obsolete detail in their opinion as well. So being that I haven't seen it and it's been the unicorn since 2005, I wanted to ask any of the other municipalities, maybe you may know right out of the gate whether you still use this detail, the last time you may have seen this type of application, and if you haven't, that's fine. You could check with, somebody that may know more about it within your agency, because I'd like to bring this case forward to actually remove the detail 302-1 and 302-2 in its entirety. So with that said, quick question to the group. Have you seen this detail used? If you have, speak up. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. It would really not spark much discussion on whether its applicability and how recent. I don't think it's been used since, like I said, prior to 2005.
Yeah, Chairman, being new to the area, this is one that just perplexed me seeing it's very, very obsolete, and I'd be in full favor of seeing this removed.
Well, thank you. It makes me feel better that I have, I'm going to bring this forward and I'm going to try to push it through as a full delete. So having any input is valuable to me just for this case. Yeah, Megalug, everything. There's so many different joint restraints that the supply houses carry now. This is so cumbersome. Every time we brought it up, I brought it up in the past when I got into the business. The contractor would say, I'll just use thrust blocks. We're not doing all that.
It's kind of funny. This particular detail is the one detail that was never converted to CAD. It's actually a scan of a hand-drawn detail. That's how old it is.
Wow. That puts it into perspective. Did you help draw this one, Jeff?
No, the 1998 revision was when I scanned it.
Wow. Yeah, that gives you an idea. That really puts it into perspective how old that is. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. I don't know how many of you are familiar with, hold off on that one. We'll go to the Ductile Iron Pipe Research Association, also known as DIPRA. So they're really big on the polyethylene corrosion protection. I've run into this in the past where MAG doesn't call out the Ductile Iron Pipe Research Association specifically. Rather, they lead you down, MAG will lead you down a rabbit hole per se, where you follow AWWA and you start looking through different publications, and then you ultimately end up at this glorious spot called the Ductile Iron Pipe Research Association. So this has always been a challenge for my field guys, the inspectors, trying to lead the contractor into poly-wrapping properly. I understand 610 does have some very good verbiage about how to poly-wrap. I think adding DIPRA to that, not necessarily in any specific place. I'll come up with some ideas on that in the future. But I'd like to add them, and I would encourage every one of you agencies to reach out to the local Alan, I think it's Alan Cox. You go to their website, the Ductile Iron Pipe Research Association, and find their local rep. He's a corrosion expert. They will give a presentation. I've hosted one in the past at I believe it was at our Oasis campus. I invited some of the surrounding municipalities. It was quite a few years ago. We had a huge turnout. So I'd encourage you to look into that, and I'll be bringing a case forward to try to incorporate DIPRA directly so the inspectors don't have to run down the rabbit hole.
Could I inject something here?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to see if we could have a conversation on the exclusion of that poly wrap in trenchless applications. Over the years, we've had challenges when it's been mandated that poly wrap has to be on the ductile in a casing where casing spacers are supporting and protecting that water line, and the pipe itself is not in contact with the earth. And the issue lies specifically with, depending on the manufacturer of the spacers, the way spacers are created is they have a rubber liner that when you clamp down the spacer around the barrel of the ductile, the rubber locks to that ductile, and it prevents the spacer from slipping. And the issue is that if poly wrap is required, we've had issues where the spacers will slip downstream and start to bundle up and create a problem. And if there's no concern of the pipe having contact with the soil, then in essence, you shouldn't need the poly wrap if it's inside of a steel casing or any sort of a casing for that matter. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
At first I was scratching my head until you referenced a hose pipe, and then it made
Yes.
sense.
Yeah, so what we've been able to do as of late is get the understanding that we can extend the poly wrap through the bulkhead on each end of the casing a couple of feet to ensure that the poly wrap is inside the casing around the ductile and around the ductile where it's in contact with the bulkhead, which is the brick and mortar bulkhead. And therefore, as it exits the bulkhead, it's protected with the poly wrap. But you can understand the importance of making sure that the spacers are securely attached to the ductile to ensure that they support and carry that through the casing, especially as we see these lengths increasing. We're starting to see lengths of 1,600 feet, 1,300 feet that we're putting ductile through casing on spacers, and we do not want to have the issue of a spacer slipping on the ductile and causing causing it to get stuck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So anyway, all I'm saying is if when the time comes to do the rewrite, if there's some way that we could write it in the MAG that it states that for ductile inside casing per 602, it doesn't have to have the poly wrap, that would help us in the field with the inspectors.
Well, I think the next step for you or both of us, I think the next step would be to reach out directly to Alan Cox with DIPRA. And the reason why I say that is and why I keep referencing DIPRA is I've met with manufacturers on site and said, I want to see your installation guidelines for ductile iron pipe. And after you follow, like I said, after you go down the rabbit hole, you always ultimately end up at DIPRA.
Okay, good.
So I think it's a good question for DIPRA and their corrosion experts on how they feel about in a host pipe.
Well, and it also leads me into another topic here, and it would be I'd be absolutely thrilled to participate in any meeting with you and them. It leads us down the path of the other challenge we have, and that is, depending on who you talk to, how far is ductile iron capable of being pushed through a casing? Because depending on the joint and depending on the manufacturer and depending on the people involved in a specific project, we've had situations where we've been told we can only push 300 feet of ductile before we have to start pulling it, because the joint isn't designed to be pushed on for that length, because as you add joints and you're pushing it into a casing, you're building overall weight, and you're going to ultimately exceed basically the thrust load capability of the joint itself. So therefore, it's important to ensure that as these casings get longer and longer, that the ductile that's being spec'd going through the casing is a ductile that's designed to either be pushed for that distance or pulled for that distance. Because depending on the specific ductile joint, it could lead to a problematic problem. When we did a job in the West Valley for 1,600 feet, it was decided after a lot of discussion that we needed to pull in, that the joint would handle the pull load. It could not handle the push load. So we had to come up with a methodology to tug 1,600 feet of ductile through a casing.
Yeah, over-homing a joint like that.
Yeah.
Extreme pressures on that bell.
Right.
That's a whole different technical engineering question than corrosion, and I know you would agree with that.
I agreed, yeah, but that is a topic that at some point we need to address, because the concern is just that if you over-home it, over-stab it, and down the road it fails, it's going to become a problem for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I'm going to loop you in with myself and Alan Cox. Maybe we'll get just a quick Teams call going or something with him on the corrosion resistance or the corrosion properties and the poly wrap and how it mitigates that, and where DIPRA falls in line with AWWA and the poly wrap. And ultimately, like I said, the bottom of the rabbit hole, you reach this. Why this came up was, like I said, the inspectors are challenged with this every time, and then each inspector has to go down that rabbit hole with the grumpy contractors that don't want to wrap it a specific way. It all takes time, and the latest challenge has been with the actual double banded bronze saddle. I've been on enough digs for pipe that's been in the ground for quite a while to realize that when you don't protect from corrosion, that whole pipe just rots out all around that double banded bronze saddle. And
Right.
DIPRA has a method, and I'm not going to bore everybody with it right now, but they have a method to mitigate that, and they show it. So I'll loop you in on that. I'm going to get through the rest of these. I don't want to run too long on this meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Arvid. Also, I wanted to look at updating detail 345-2. Thank you, Gordon. This is mainly to a lot of these suppliers, for one, aren't even around. They've been bought out. There's newer technology. There's other manufacturers. I'm sorry, I said suppliers. I meant to say manufacturers. There's other manufacturers out there that have just as good, if not better, products. I'm not saying a Badger is a better product, but we typically see Badgers. I don't even see Badger listed in here. I would like to get away from single sourcing or labeling specific manufacturers. I'm going to look at changing this detail, this one and the next one, which is 346, and also 389, that's specific to brass. I'm gonna look at changing, or I'm gonna rephrase that, modify these details just to eliminate the specific manufacturers. Rockwell, I believe, was bought out by Census possibly, but for some reason it's still called out. It's also a 1998 detail. Hershey, I can't really find much information on Hershey. My water services meter shop said we won't use this detail just because the manufacturers that are called out, Neptune, Trident's, I believe those are still around. So I'd like to gain some support from the whole entire committee to remove the manufacturer names and leave it at the discretion of the owner and the agency, which would ultimately be your meter shop or your approved manufacturers list. So you guys will be seeing that one come forward soon. The curb stop, same thing. Mueller's got a great product. We use Mueller. We use, there's a lot of different great products out there that we approve for the use on the brass. Ford, Jones, I think, once again, I think that curb stop should be at the discretion of the owner of the agency, whether that looks like a submittal or whether that looks like their approved brass list. So is anybody in the committee in disagreement with me? No?
No, I would agree. We've been kind of leaning towards always removing manufacturers now, so.
Manufacturers change, they get bought out, other technologies, other manufacturers come up with other technologies. I don't think it's fair to to everybody. Gordon, can you go back to 346 real quick? I'm wondering if this one in particular should be moved to the outside of right-of-way publication. Reason being,
That was on our list. That was on our list of ones we were asking, should it be moved to it?
yeah, I think so, especially after speaking to my distribution team. They agreed this is never in the right of way. This is always outside of the right of way, at least in their experience. Maybe other agencies, it may be different, but I think this should be an out of right of way publication, or be included in the outer right of way publication. All right, thank you, Gordon, for scrolling through that. You're very patient. Other potential cases, I don't know if, I know we're talking about sidewalk ramps and ADA ramps. I don't think we have, Craig's not here from Buckeye. Is there anybody else that can speak a little bit too about that? And if we're gonna be seeing a case on this soon? All right, hearing nothing, hearing none, we're gonna move into agenda item number 13. This is the MAG staff report.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing I want to mention is that in your packet, it does include some of the comments that Craig Sharp of from Buckeye made. I know we're short on time and he's not here today, but you may want to review those. As far as the staff report, I'm going to be real quick. The meeting in June has been moved from June 5th, the first Wednesday, to June 12th, the second Wednesday, to help with the schedule of our chair. And it's going to be moved in the chaparral room for those who are coming in person. We've got a room conflict, but we're fine in that room. July 3rd meeting stays the same. This was based on kind of an informal survey of emails that were sent out. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick is that I'm not sure how many members are already doing this, but MAG can be counted as an in-kind contribution when you're working for when you're doing activities for MAG, such as when you're attending the committee meetings or if you're working on cases for MAG, this is only for agency members, but there is an option to receive some in-kind contribution for your agency. And I do have additional information, a link I can send you to that has more information about this. And you can also contact your intergovernmental agency to see if this is something that they would like to do or would like you to do. I don't know if there's anyone here who does this already, but it does require some additional time and paperwork to record your activities. But it does also help your agency.
Thank you, Gordon. I know Glendale sends out a request and all of us members, we go ahead and we put in our time and mileage and whatnot. I don't know if that has anything to do in specific with the in-kind contribution.
Yes, if you're doing that, that's what it's for, is that the work that you do for MAG can be considered an in-kind contribution from your city when it comes to matching funds required for projects that receive federal funding. So it's a way to kind of both help MAG and help your agency with the funding requirements for matching projects.
I appreciate that staff report, Gordon. I'm glad you got it back on the agenda. I always look forward to it. That's good information. Thank you. Let's move into agenda item number 14, general discussion. This is basically discussion on topics of interest related to specifications, construction practices, and or technologies. I know Arvid had a couple good points on newer technologies and whatnot in the past. Seems like he's always on the in on that. Anybody have anything for us on this item? It's just information and discussion. All right, thank you. Agenda item number 15. Request for future agenda items. Does any of the committee members have any requests for any future agenda items? Okay. Agenda item number 16, comments from the committee. An opportunity is provided to the committee members to present a brief summary of current events. In the past, we've had some pretty good points brought up, especially about Title 34. That came from Ryan Nichols, I believe. Any other summaries on current events or anything upcoming from other agencies? All right, once again, I'd like to thank every one of you for attending. Every one of you guys and ladies, everybody here is a crucial component, part of this committee. Your input, your work is of its own value. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today, and we'll see you at the next one. This meeting's adjourned.